Hey there, my name's Brashler, and in this video, I want to teach you how to create a vocal reverb, or just really a reverb, on your Behringer WING. Now, if you're brand new to my channel, I'm all about helping you feel more confident with your production gear, no matter where you're starting from. But let's actually dive in and see how we can create a reverb on your Behringer WING. Now, with the Behringer WING, we have 16 mix buses, and those 16 mix buses can either be mono or stereo, depending on how we have them actually programmed. But by default, they are stereo, which is great because we have our 48 stereo channels and our 4 main buses and the 8 matrices, and basically everything on the console starts out as stereo unless you program it to be mono. But with a reverb, we want it to be stereo. So I have my vocal, and I'll start this with a microphone here, and I have this microphone, and this is coming in on channel 36. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. And so this obviously is mono, but with our reverb, we want it to be stereo. And if I'm thinking of having, say, 6 vocalists on stage, maybe I'm doing some panning of those vocalists while they're up on stage, creating a little bit of a stereo spectrum on our mix of our vocals. And I want to create that with the verb as well. And I want to keep that with the verb as well. So there's a couple things that I'm going to do with my bus setup specifically for this to actually function this way. So with the Behringer WING, we have our effects section, and we can see our effects section by clicking up into our effects button, and we have 16 effects racks built into the Behringer WING. Now, the first 8 effects racks, 1 through 8 here on the left-hand side, are for our time-based effects. That would be a reverb, a chorus, a flanger. It would be a delay, anything that is using time as part of the effect. Now, with a reverb, it is a time-based effect because you are hearing that source, say your vocal, in a hall or a plate reverb, different things like that. And so basically, we have these first 8 effects racks specifically that we can use for those time-based effects. We can also use it as an insert effect. So you could insert it as, say, a compressor or a limiter, that sort of thing. But with our reverb, we have to choose one of these first 8 racks. Now, with the reverb setup, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my bus masters on my right-hand side of the board. And so I'm going to hit bus masters, and then I'm going to arrow over until I get to my bus 13 through 16. Because basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my 4 buses here, 13 through 16, as effects. I can set them up as a vocal reverb. I could set it up as an instrument verb or a vocal delay or a drum verb, something like that. And basically the steps that I'm going to show you today are the same if you were wanting to set it up as an instrument verb or a drum verb. You're just changing what sources of your channels are going to that bus. So in this case, I'm going to select my bus 13, and I'm just going to press home, and let's go ahead and give this a name. So this is going to be Vox Verb. Just like that. So we have Vox Verb right here. Now, the next thing that I need to do is a few things. First, I want to make sure that this is set up as a stereo bus. Now, if you are on a Behringer WING that you've been on for a while, maybe some of these buses have been used in different ways. So today, I'm going to show you what you need to double check to make sure that this will actually function the way that we want it to. So the first thing is to make sure that the mono button is not turned on, because we want this to be a stereo bus. So just make sure that that is not set to mono, because if it's set to mono, then the output of it is going to be very flat sounding. The next thing that we need to do is we need to click up into the bus feed portion, and we need to set this to be post fader. Now, why am I saying post fader? Well, post fader is important because if I go look at my vocals here, I have a lead vocal on my vocal 1 here, as well as a backing vocal that's kind of sharing that. It's a little bit of a duo kind of with this song on my vocal 6. Now my vocals 2 through 5 are background vocals. Now, rightfully, I'm going to be pushing the main vocals louder than I would be the background vocals. But the next song that happens, one of these vocalists are going to be leading the song instead of vocal 1 and 6. Maybe vocal 2 and 3 would be leading at that point. And so with the next song, I would be then pushing my vocals 2 and 3 up louder. Now, I want my send to my vocal reverb to reflect that. Now, if I set up my vocal verb to be pre-fader, then I would maybe be preferencing one vocal louder than the other. And then the vocal verb mix is always going to sound off from what your actual mix is of your vocals, which is why we want to set it up as post-fader. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to press select all channels here. So we have all of our channels, and I'm going to set this send mode to post. I'm going to ignore my channel mutes as off. Basically, if this is on, then if you mute a channel, it would still go through to the verb, which we don't want to have. Now, send panning, I'm going to link to the channel pan, which is important because if I'm panning, say, vocal 2 to the left, then I'm wanting that left panning to reflect also in the verb. Now, the next thing I'm going to see is send level. I'm going to set to infinity, which is all the way down. And then with send enable, I am going to turn this to off. Now, because I have all of my channels and I'm setting it to these, when I press apply, any previous settings that I had on this bus will be reflected in the way that I have it set up. So maybe some of the drums are accidentally going to this bus. And by doing this, we're just enabling this bus to pretty much be what we call zeroed out. And so in this case, I'm going to press apply. Now what we can do is we can press close. And then the next thing that I need to do is verify that this bus is going to my main left right. And so to do that, we click down here into the main section, and we can see that I have main left right and it is turned on. Now, if you have any other main buses that you're using, say my main 4, I have a stream set up with this. So this is what's actually feeding my online stream, for instance. And so we would want to make sure that this is turned on, because if it's not, then my vocal verb is just going to my main left right and not to my online stream. So if you have used any of your mains for any other purposes and you want your vocal verb to go to those, then we would want to turn them on in this case. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to go and select an effects rack for this vocal verb. And so to do that, we can either choose a pre-fader insert point or a post-fader insert point. There's going to be slight differences between the two. The post-fader is going to allow you to have an EQ before your verb. If you choose a pre-fader, you would have your EQ after the verb. So you can decide how you want to have it set up by yourself, but in this case, I'm going to be choosing to have it on the pre-fader. And that way I can EQ the output of the verb of how it sounds and blends into my mix. I could make it a little bit brighter or a little bit darker by using my EQ. So in this case, I'm going to press on, and then I'm going to click into Effects Processor, and I'm going to select an effects rack that I want to. Remember, it does need to be between 1 through 8. So in this case, I'm going to select rack 1. Now at this point, I have set up this bus to not have anything going to it yet, but we have this set up so it's going through effects rack 1 and it's also feeding my main buses. Now at this point, I can go into my effects type and I can go select a verb that I want. And so in this case, I'm just going to select a blue plate here. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to first turn this up to 0. And then at this point, I want to start feeding some actual inputs into this so that I can actually hear what this sounds like. And so to do that, what we can do is we can select our vocal verb, and then we can hit Sends on Fader, and then we can go look at our channels and decide what channels we want to have go to this verb. In this case, I have my vocal mic here, so check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Let's make sure that this is turned up. Here we go. So have Sense on Fader turned on, and then I am going to turn this up and unmute it. And so at this point, I'm listening to the soloed portion of this verb. And so we can see and hear that we now have some pretty aggressive verb on this. Now, I'm wanting to set this to 0 dB on here. And the reason being is because I want my vocal mix to be sent at 0 dB or nominal gain to this vocal verb. And then what I can do is I can use this master fader as my vocal return and vocal level for actually going into my main left right, which I'll explain here in a little bit. But in this case, I'm going to unsolo this here. And so let's get out of sends on fader. And so if I turn this vocal verb down, and I have this microphone, so check 1, 2, check 1, 2. And then I start raising this up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we can hear this verb happening in my mix. And so there's a couple adjustments that we can have on this plate reverb to really make this sound either great or bad in our mix. Now, a couple things. Pre-delay gives us the amount of delay between hearing this mic and the first reflection in the verb. Check, check. Now, if I set this pre-delay to 0, we don't hear that early reflection that happens. Check, check. It just goes straight into a verb. And so if I set this all the way up to 200, check, check. And so this gives us a sense of size. So you can give a sense of size to your verb by setting your pre-delay. Now, a great spot to start with your pre-delay is anywhere between 50 to 100 milliseconds here. So here is what 50 sounds like. Check, 1, 2, 1, 2. And here is 100. Check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, the next thing that we have is our size. Now, if we take our size and make it bigger, it's going to make this a larger sounding plate or a larger sounding room. If we set this to 0 or down to 2, it's going to have a little bit less of a kind of fall off with this reverb. Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. So we can hear that big difference there. Now, the next thing that we have is our decay. Now, our decay gives us how long is this reverb going to trail off. If we have this set all the way down to 0.2 seconds, we can hear that it sounds like a very small room. In fact, I'm going to turn this up here a little bit, and we can hear that it just sounds very kind of like you're in an office room that has very reflective walls. Now, if we take this and we go all the way up to 5 seconds, check. That hangs on for a long time. Now, with this, you can imagine having a decay of 5 seconds is going to be very distracting in a fast-paced song. Now, maybe with a slower song, you could get away with having a decay of 5 seconds, but most music, if you're going with a faster kind of tempo, is probably going to be best between 1.5 seconds, check 1, 2, and about 2.5 seconds, check 1, 2. Then we also have this thing called dampening. Now we can hear that the dampening adjusts the reflections. So the reflections sound a lot brighter with this set to 20K. Now if I start bringing this down, check, 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 it's gotten a lot darker sounding. And so this is one way of creating your verb to sound darker or brighter, is just by adjusting this dampening. If you want a very bright sounding verb, then having this dampening up at 20K is going to be ideal for you. If you want a darker sounding verb, you can adjust this dampening down to give you a darker sounding verb. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and set this to about 5 to 6K right here. Now we also have our bass multiplier. This is another way of creating either a brighter sounding verb or a darker sounding verb. So currently it's set at 1.09, and if I take this all the way up, check, check, 1, 2, or if I take this down, check, check, 1, 2, check, check, 1, 2. So we can hear that with this, if we have the bass multiplier higher, it's going to add in a little bit of lower end rumble into this mix of our verb. Now we also have this thing called a crossover. Now the crossover is going to apply where this bass multiplier starts going. So if we turn this all the way up to 500, check 1, 2. We can hear a little bit of lower mid range. Check 1, 2. And that really kind of cut out some of the mid-range as well. So if we leave this right at 1, it's just going to be a very simple thing. Now we also have our low cut, which will allow us to choose where this reverb will have with its low cut. It's the same thing as a low cut on your channel. Now if we set this low cut all the way up to 400, check, 1, 2, or all the way down at 20, check, 1, 2. So we can hear a lot more low end if we have this low cut set here. So a happy medium with this is probably setting it about 150 hertz. That way we don't have a ton of bass build up. If you find that your verb is sitting in your mix and making it a little bit more muddy, then bringing this low cut maybe into the 200 hertz is probably going to be a good idea. Now we also have our high cut. Now our high cut will also make our verb either brighter or darker. So with the high cut, if I have this set at 20 kilohertz, check, 1, 2, or all the way down to 0.2, okay, check, 1, 2, which is 200 hertz, and anywhere in between. So a pretty good happy medium with this is about 7K, check, 1, 2. So with this, we can now have our verb. Now, with our mix here, I obviously have my vocal. Now, if I take this vocal mic down, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, it's no longer going through to this verb because remember, this is a post-fader send. So wherever I have this volume set to is what's actually being sent to this vocal verb, which is why I liked to set it at 0 dB on my sends on fader going to this bus. It just keeps it nice and simple. Now, if you do find that you always have your vocal verb, say, down at -10, and you do want to get it up to 0, then what you can do is you can go and apply a 10 dB pad to all of the inputs going into your vocal verb, and then you can raise this up to 0. So for instance, if I was really happy with this level, check 1, 2, and I'm sitting at -10 on my master here, what I could do is I could go to sends on fader, and I can take all of my microphones feeding this verb and turn them down to -10, and then turn up my master of this to 0. And this is the same amount of verb that I had before. So just keep that in mind that you can do that with your vocals. So in this case, I'm going to put it back up to 0. And let's go ahead and then see how we can mix in our verb with the rest of our band. And so in this case, I have some music here that I'm going to go ahead and turn on, and we can actually listen to what this band sounds like without verb, and then we can start applying some verb into the mix. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this vocal verb fader down. That way we won't have any verb quite yet. And so here is what this mix sounds like.
The grave rolled the stone, let the light in. Lord, I'm praying you do the same with me. You're still robbing grace, still breaking chains. Your resurrection power lives in me. I come alive, you fan the flame. Holy.
And then if I go listen to a quieter section,
Gonna hold me down with resurrection power. I'm coming, I'm running out.
they're kind of just right in front of you. And so with this, what we can do is we can go find our vocals, and I have those sitting right here. And so I have my vocal verb selected still. I'm going to hit sends on fader. I'm going to unmute the vocals that I want to have going into my vocal verb, and I'm going to turn them up to 0. We've already done this on my microphone channel, remember, but in this case, we're wanting these vocal channels to go through to this verb. Now I'm going to go ahead and get out of sends on fader, and at this point, I have these vocals going to my vocal verb, but I have the vocal verb turned down. So at this point, I'm going to start feeding this in, and we can listen to what this sounds like. So let's start out with the quiet section here.
Gonna hold me down with resurrection power. I'm coming, I'm running out, I'm running out. Running my sins to my shame, taking the power from the grave. Gonna hold me down with resurrection power. I'm coming.
Now, obviously, this is a little too much verb because it's starting to get a little bit too messy, especially if we go back to one of the sections where they're pretty loud and hot. Right here. It's being too much verb.
in the flame. Holy Spirit fire.
But if we pull this down,
on me. Come set me free. Come set me free. From the grave in me. From the grave in me. Won't you set me free? Oh, set me free. From the grave in me.
right into about this section here.
You're still robbing graves. Called out of the grave, I'm running. Ain't
Now,
nothing
let me
gonna
mute this
hold
verb.
me down. With
All of a sudden, they're just right up in front of you.
This
This gives us a little bit presentation of space. And that's the main goal for a verb, is you're just creating space with your vocals. Now, if you are mixing in a large arena or a cathedral or something that has a lot of natural reverb, you're probably not going to need to add vocal verb into your mix because it already sounds like there's verb naturally from your room. But if you are mixing for your online stream from that same room, from that front of house console, then your online stream is going to sound very dry. And so this is where we can actually use this vocal verb to our benefit, is you can create a sound that sounds like you're in the space that you are in with your online stream, which is important. But just remember that we have the ability of sending this vocal verb just to our online stream. We can do that by selecting our vocal verb and just taking it out of our main left right. And so at this point, it's only going to the stream. Now, obviously, you would need to verify your online mix quite often if you have a vocal verb that you're not actively listening to in your main left right. So just keep that in mind. If you are unassigning this from your main left right, you will need to put on some headphones and quite often listen to your online mix. But this is one way of kind of creating that sense of room in your online mix. Now, I know some of you are wondering, how do I get this vocal verb into my monitor? Well, in some of the most recent firmware updates on the Behringer WING, we can do bus-to-bus routing, which is amazing. So, say you have your monitor on bus 1. I'm going to go over to bus 1 here, and I'm just going to give this a name, and this is going to be IEM 1. And in-ears, especially vocalists, want to hear some sort of verb in their mix, which is important. Now, there's a few caveats about this. Your vocal mix for your verb is set off of your front of house mix. So you can't really make a custom verb unless you dedicate another bus and do the same thing, but only feed the specific microphones into that verb that you want to feed into your in-ear mix. So just keep that in mind. But in this case, say your vocalist on IEM 1 wants to hear this vocal verb. So we have this in-ear 1 right here. Now, what we can do is we can go find our vocal verb, which is over on bus 13. We can select this and then go to our sends here. So we can see that this says bus to bus sends. And so at this point, what I can do is I can go find my in-ear 1. I can turn this on and I can vary the amount of verb into my in-ear mix. And so at this point, this vocalist would then have their microphone going into their in-ears, as well as the vocal verb going into that as well. Now, I hope this video was helpful for you today. Now, if you do happen to have any questions, or there's a specific thing that you're looking to learn how to do on the Behringer WING, please post that in the comment section down below, as I'm always reading through those comments to find videos that can be helpful for you. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my website at drewbrashler.com, where I have that course and some downloads available for the Behringer WING, the Behringer X-Air, and the Behringer X32. So you can check that out at drewbrashler.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.